and that ICE is kidnapping people, and it is not immigration. But I do want to warn you that this is incredibly dark. This is not my opinion. These are verifiable facts. But once you see this laid out, you will not be able to unsee it. And again, it is very dark. Like, I felt so physically ill once I tied these things together that I had to sit for a while before I could even film this. What MAGA is calling border security, it isn't about safety or crime at all. It's about keeping a permanent underclass of brown labor without any rights. I think that the people that are working for ICE and MAGA, they think that we're getting rid of the immigrants. But what's actually happening is so much darker than that. We are enslaving them and cycling them through a system designed to keep them voiceless, rightless, and disposable, while guaranteeing that America stays white indefinitely. Right, like usual, we have to go back before we end up at present day. Back in 2021, federal agents busted something called Operation Blooming Onion in Georgia. It was one of the largest human trafficking operations in U.S. history. Dozens of farm workers, mostly from Mexico and Central America, were held at gunpoint, raped, forced to dig onions with their bare hands for 20 cents a bucket, locked in trailers and surrounded by electric fences. And this wasn't a one-time thing. This is a huge part of agribusiness, the treatment of these kinds of workers. And in case you're wondering, I ended up tying these things together because I couldn't understand. I could never figure out why the farmers voted for Trump. And then I found this. Back in 2024, there was something called the Farm Workers Protection Rule, which was a set of rules put in place by the Biden administration to protect these H-2A workers. It was meant to protect these workers from things like being locked in trailers, not fed properly, not paid properly, not access to proper health care, basically slavery. And of course, the moment that Trump came back into office, he rolled all of those protections back. And his administration quietly dismantled the farm worker protection rules. They also reversed the minimum wage formula, which meant that those workers were now going to be paid several dollars less per hour. I'm going to tie the ICE raids into it. Just stay with me. And that right there is why agribusiness farmers backed Trump. Because under Trump, immigration reform doesn't mean fewer workers. It means cheaper ones, disposable ones, a perfect captive labor force. Now on to the ICE raids. So here's how the system works now. ICE raids ramp up, mass detentions of undocumented workers, and the ones rounded up are being sent to for-profit detention centers, run by, of course, Core Civic and GEO Group, who also happen to be two of Trump's largest donors. And while locked inside for crimes not committed, are forced to cook, clean, and run the facilities that they are being held captive at. And most of them are working for less than $1 a day. No criminal conviction, no due process, just pure profit for Core Civic and GEO Group. Also happens to be a direct violation of the 13th Amendment, which only allows forced labor inside of prisons for people who have been convicted of crimes. Mind you that these people are being kidnapped, not given due process, and have not been convicted of anything. And they're being forced to work under the threat of indefinite detention or deportation. That is not immigration enforcement. That is human trafficking. So all these people that we see go into these detention centers and they go missing, funded by our tax dollars and laundered through the language of law and order. And eventually, after they're processed and deported, those workers are replaced by a whole new batch of H-2A workers, the program that Trump rolled back all the restrictions on, which has exploded to record high of 370,000 visas issued this year under the Trump administration. And these new workers, unlike immigrants who can leave if they feel that they're not being treated fairly, these new workers coming in on this H-2A program, they can't report abuse, their passports are seized, they live in filthy conditions and can be deported immediately if they were to speak out to anybody like the press. It's legal servitude. And thanks to Trump's rollback of wages and safety precautions, farmers are now incentivized to use more and more H-2A labor, which pretty much guarantees that these farmers will never have to hire or pay a laborer what they're worth ever again. So now when we're asking ourselves, why did these farmers back Trump? There's your answer. He didn't just promise them border security. He handed them state-sponsored slave labor with full and absolute legal cover. Guys, this is exactly what eugenics looks like in the 21st century. Not sterilization clinics or immigration quotas, it's economic control. A system that decides who gets to live freely and who gets to labor for life. To tie it all together, that means that people who are walking down the street get racially profiled for being brown, and they get kidnapped, then detained in a for-profit prison center, and the more people that they're able to grab, the bigger the government contract that Trump gives to his buddies' private prisons. Then, after keeping them, mind you, they're getting paid about $150 per day from the federal government, our tax dollars, for each person they detain. They're only paying the detainees $1 a day for forced labor, which is against the 13th Amendment because they haven't been convicted of anything. And then after a few weeks to a few months of that terrible treatment, they're deported only to be brought back in through the H-2A program so that they are basically held hostage by U.S. farmers. And let me not miss the forest for the trees here. People that are coming here as hostages to work in forced labor camps, they're not settling in America. They're not having families. They're not having babies, aka they're not increasing their population numbers inside of the United States. This isn't even about immigration anymore. We are now in the business of state-sponsored human trafficking.